1. How Trump's shooting incident fueled beliefs in a divine right of MAGA. 2. Senate report exposes Secret Service failures in Trump assassination attempt. 3. Trump shooting exposed. Secret Service failures revealed in scathing Senate report. 1. How Trump's shooting incident fueled beliefs in a divine right of MAGA. For millions of Americans, a near-fatal bullet didn't just wound a political leader, it anointed a divine messenger. The attempted assassination of Donald Trump has profoundly reshaped the spiritual landscape of his political movement, transforming whispers of providence into a full-throated belief in a MAGA divine right. Travel the roads winding from Pittsburgh to Butler, Pennsylvania, and you'll see the evidence firsthand. The landscape, dotted with cornfields and rustic farm stands, is also a canvas for faith. Billboards display verses from 1 Corinthians and Psalm 27. One local church sign features a striking image, an American flag contorted by the wind into a shape resembling the letter Y. For anyone who was at the fateful rally on July 13, 2024, that image is instantly recognizable and deeply significant. Hours before the shooting that nearly claimed Donald Trump's life, a massive 30 by 60-foot flag hanging above the stage was caught in a gust of wind, twisting into that very shape. Some people thought it looked like an angel, explains Keith Carnes, the pastor at the Church of God in nearby Connequenessing. That image of the angel flag has since become a sacred icon within the MAGA movement, taking its place alongside the now famous photograph of Trump's bloodied face and defiantly raised fist. A year later, it's clear that the assassination attempt was a watershed moment. It supercharged the religious fervor surrounding Trump, culminating in his own declaration at his second inauguration. "I was saved by God to make America great again." To be fair, the idea of Trump as a messianic figure wasn't entirely new. Fringe groups with QAnon ties, like one known as -48, have been showing up at his rallies since 2022, hinting at such beliefs. Trump himself has always framed his movement as being on God's side, and his supporters have often described his rallies as spiritual, revival-like experiences. But here's where it gets transformative. After the shooting, the belief that Trump is an instrument of God's will move from the fringes to the mainstream of his base, and was embraced explicitly by the man himself. It is difficult not to see the hand of providence in Trump's survival of 2 assassination attempts, one by less than an inch, notes Ralph Reed, a prominent Republican strategist and influential evangelical leader. President Trump has said publicly he believes God spared his life, and millions of his supporters feel the same way. For what purpose only God knows, but it clearly isn't an insubstantial one. And this is the part most people miss. This surge in political faith is happening against a backdrop of declining traditional religious observance. Reed's Faith and Freedom Coalition estimates that the number of social conservatives and evangelicals has skyrocketed, growing tenfold since the 1990s and by roughly 30% since 2010 alone. This is happening even as the General Social Survey shows a steep drop in regular church attendance, from 55% of U.S. adults in 1972 to just 37% in 2024. It seems that for some, political identity is becoming a new form of religious identity. Journalist Tim Alberta, in his 2024 book, The Kingdom, the Power and the Glory, argues that this shift was fueled by congregants demanding more political engagement from their pastors, who often complied to avoid losing their flock. This trend was solidified when the Trump administration announced that the federal ban on political campaigning by nonprofit organizations, known as the Johnson Amendment, would no longer apply to houses of worship. This move effectively dismantled the long-standing wall between pulpit and polling booth, a decision celebrated by some as religious freedom and condemned by others as a dangerous politicization of faith. ***. Even Trump, a man not known for his personal piety, was profoundly affected. His immediate reaction to surviving the shooting, according to the book 2024, How Trump Retook the White House and the Democrats Lost America, was a stunned, "I'm not supposed to be here." His top advisor, Susie Wiles, reportedly told him, "You do know this is God." From that point on, Trump began to publicly state, if anyone ever doubted there was a God, that proved there was. Back in Butler, the day after the shooting, County GOP Chair Jim Hewlings saw church parking lots overflowing. He wryly reappropriated a line Barack Obama once used to describe small-town Pennsylvanians. We cling to our guns and our Bibles. That Sunday, Pastor Carnes preached on the fragility of life, quoting Psalm 90, which compares our time on earth to grass that flourishes in the morning and withers by evening. The sermon was deeply personal. His own son, daughters-in-law, and grandchildren had been at the rally, sitting right behind Corey Compertor, a 50-year-old volunteer firefighter. They recalled Compertor's kindness, how he helped Pastor Carnes' 12-year-old granddaughter, Alexa, retrieve her phone and passed out water to everyone around him. When the shots rang out, Compertor was killed while shielding his family. It's one of those things where you feel like you're in this place at a certain time, and there's a reason for it, said Lisa Carnes, the pastor's daughter-in-law. I felt like, God, why take him? You could have taken me. That night, the family showed the pastor the photos of the twisted flag. He decided to use the image on the church sign not as a political endorsement, he says, but as a message of comfort, gratitude for their safety, and a tribute to Compertor's sacrifice. On the way home, young Alexa told her mother she had prayed for God to protect Trump before the rally. Lisa encouraged her to write him a letter. In green pen, the 12-year-old wrote, Dear President Trump, I was on the same bleachers of the man who died. Before the rally, I had prayed that you wouldn't get shot. God answer my prayers. I hope you win the election. Trump wrote back, and the framed letter now hangs in their home. The Republican National Convention that followed took these private feelings of divine intervention and broadcast them to the nation. That was a transformation, declared Tucker Carlson from the stage. This was no longer a man. From a floor, a voice shouted, Divine intervention. Carlson agreed. Eric Trump introduced his father by saying, By the grace of God, divine intervention and your guardian angels above, you survived. The candidate himself proclaimed, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. When Trump returned to Butler for another rally in October, the spiritual symbolism was even more intense. A man dragged a large wooden cross along the road to the fairgrounds. A prayer group noted that the shooting occurred at 6:11 p.m., linking it to Ephesians 6 verse 11, the verse about putting on the full armor of God. Speakers shared their own mystical experiences. One recalled the flag looking like a crucifix or an angel, calling it a warning. Another, a retired doctor who aided Compertor, testified to hearing the voice of God telling him to help. For the Carnes family, who returned for that second rally, the most powerful moment was yet to come. As anxiety spiked in the crowd, Christy Carnes, the pastor's other daughter-in-law, wondered why she had come back. At that exact moment, the giant flag overhead once again twisted into that familiar Y shape, holding it for a moment before gracefully unfurling. We just all looked at each other and we were like, oh my word, she recalled. No one could have done that. It could have only been God, and it just gave us that peace. In a recent sermon, Pastor Carnes again spoke of life's fragility, of the grass that withers. He asked his congregation to see God's strength in their trials. For Lisa Carnes, the connection is clear. It took a very strong man who could help right our country back to being God's country, she says. I do feel like God protected him to help our country. This raises a profound question for our time. Is the interpretation of these events a genuine spiritual awakening for millions, or is it a masterful harnessing of religious symbolism for political gain? Can a leader be both a public servant and a perceived instrument of divine will? And what are the implications when those two roles merge in the minds of voters? We want to hear your thoughts. Is this a story of faith or one of politics? Or can it be both? Share your perspective in the comments below. 2. Senate report exposes Secret Service failures in Trump assassination attempt. Imagine a scenario where the leader of the free world narrowly escapes assassination, not once, but twice, due to systemic failures by the very agency tasked with protecting them. This isn't a plot from a thriller novel. It's the stark reality uncovered by a scathing Senate report that exposes a web of negligence, communication breakdowns, and unaccountable leadership within the United States Secret Service, USS. Released by Senator Rand Paul, chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. The report marks 1 year since the attempted assassination of then-candidate Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, on July 13, 2024. While the document largely reaffirms previously known details, its significance lies in its blistering critique of the USSS's stunning failures that turned a preventable security lapse into a near-catastrophic event. #the report's core claim, preventable tragedy. Paul's investigation paints a disturbing picture of an agency in disarray. President Trump's survival was a miracle, the report emphasizes, but the pattern of failures goes far beyond luck. Key findings include: denied resources. The USSS headquarters repeatedly rejected requests for critical security assets at Trump's 2024 campaign events, including counter-snipers, counter-assault teams, CATs, and drones. A stark example? Ahead of a July 9th rally in Doral, Florida, the USSS's own intelligence briefing warned of heightened outdoor risks. Yet a request for counter-snipers was ignored. Communication collapse. Local law enforcement and the USSS failed to coordinate effectively, leaving glaring vulnerabilities. For instance, a rally in South Carolina saw an unfulfilled request for counter-snipers, despite their presence at the later and more deadly Butler event. Insufficient accountability. Of 6 USSS personnel disciplined, the report slams the penalties as too weak, citing a culture of impunity. #, the USSS pushback and controversy. Secret Service Director Sean Curran responded by highlighting post-incident reforms, stating, "We've taken a hard look at our operations and implemented substantive changes." However, the report alleges that former Director Kimberly Cheadle misled Congress by claiming no requests were denied for the Butler rally, contradicting evidence of at least 2 rejected asset requests. Former Acting Director Ronald Rowe's testimony is also labeled misleading. #, why this matters beyond politics. The controversy isn't just about Trump, it's about systemic risks. As Paul notes, if these failures happen to a former president, what does it say about protection for public figures and national security events? The report demands tougher accountability, questioning whether the USSS's reforms address deep-seated issues or merely scratch the surface. #, the bigger question. Can we trust the Secret Service? Critics argue the agency's reforms may be too little, too late, given its history of scandals, e.g., the 2013 White House fence jumper. Supporters counter that the USSS has learned from its mistakes. Your turn. Do disciplinary actions like suspensions adequately address life-threatening negligence? Or is more needed? Should the USSS undergo a full overhaul? Share your thoughts below. Expanded for clarity with examples. Retains all original key points while enhancing conversational tone and controversy hooks. 3. Trump shooting exposed. Secret Service failures revealed in scathing Senate report. A tragedy that should never have happened. That's the devastating conclusion of a new Senate report, which paints a picture of catastrophic failure within the very agency tasked with protecting the nation's leaders, ultimately allowing an assassination attempt on then-presidential candidate Donald Trump. Released on the 1-year anniversary of the harrowing event, a scathing report from the Senate Homeland Security Committee alleges that the Secret Service was plagued by stunning failures and outright negligence. The investigation, spearheaded by Committee Chairman Rand Paul, asserts that the agency had credible intelligence about potential dangers ahead of the July 13, 2024 rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, but failed to act on these direct threats. The breakdown in security was systemic, involving a critical failure to coordinate effectively with both local law enforcement on the ground and even with Trump's own protective detail. In a powerful statement, Senator Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, did not mince words. This was not a single lapse in judgment, he declared. It was a complete breakdown of security at every level, fueled by bureaucratic indifference, a lack of clear protocols, and a shocking refusal to act on direct threats. He stressed the urgent need for accountability and reform, stating, "We must hold individuals accountable and ensure reforms are fully implemented so this never happens again." The 30-page document meticulously outlines a series of errors and threats that culminated in what it calls an inexcusable and preventable tragedy. The consequences were dire. A major party's presidential candidate was nearly assassinated. A rally attendee named Corey Compertor lost his life, and 2 other individuals were wounded. The committee's assessment is that the agency has yet to face sufficient consequences for these profound failures. But here's where the story takes a controversial turn. In the aftermath, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle resigned, and 6 other individuals faced disciplinary measures. However, the report highlights a fact that has many observers stunned. Not a single person was fired. The committee noted that the penalties administered were far less severe than what they would have recommended, given the gravity of the security collapse. Senator Paul expressed deep concern over this lack of severe repercussions during an appearance on CBS's Face the Nation. Some of these people could be in charge of security for another presidential candidate. And really, that's a danger. That's not right, he warned. He further accused former Director Cheadle of not telling Congress the truth when she claimed no requested resources for the Butler rally were denied. The report substantiates this, revealing that at least 10 separate requests for additional security assets by Trump's protective division were either denied or went unfulfilled during the campaign, including, critically, the deployment of counter-snipers. And this is the part most people miss. The accusation goes beyond simple incompetence. Paul labeled the agency's internal response a cultural cover-up. He argued they did not want to assess blame. They did not want to look internally. And they wanted to discount any of their actions that might have led to this. This suggests a deep-seated institutional problem where protecting the agency's image took precedence over genuine self-correction. In response to these explosive findings, the Secret Service, under its new director, Sean Curran, has stated it will continue to cooperate with the committee's investigation. Following the events of July 13th, the Secret Service took a serious look at our operations and implemented substantive reforms to address the failures that occurred that day, Curran said in a statement. The agency has publicly acknowledged that breakdowns in communication, technological issues, and human failure contributed to the attack, calling it an operational failure and a tragedy. Since the incident, the Secret Service reports that it has overhauled its operational practices and formally requested additional resources from Congress to implement the recommended changes. The question now is whether these reforms will be enough to prevent a future disaster. This brings us to a critical debate. Is a director's resignation and minor disciplinary action sufficient accountability for a security breach of this magnitude? Or does this point to a deeper cultural rot within the Secret Service that requires a more radical overhaul? We want to hear your thoughts in the comments below.